I'm Susan Smith, and I'm with the Pepperell Historical Society, which is, the love of my life. And we're very happy to have this October 19th open house, exhibiting a lot of Pepperell history. We are in the process of renovating and restoring an 1844 one-room brick schoolhouse on the corner of Shattuck and Harbor Street, and we'll be so glad when it gets done. We just finished a new wood shingled roof on it, so we'll proceed forthwith with the rest of the renovation. As I said, the school building this is a lovely oil painting done by Karen Tarr for us of the school building. And there are many, we have a very good record of the school district, which was in operation from 1817 through 1891. The building was actually replaced twice. Well, actually, it's the third rendition now on the premises. If you can pan in, I don't know if you can, to some of the photos we have here, but it's quite a good scope of history. We still have on the walls of the old schoolhouse the hand-drawn maps of the world that a good teacher at some point did, and they still are in existence at the schoolhouse. So we've been very careful to preserve them. It might be a little difficult for you to pan in on some of these items that we have, but this is a more recent photo of the schoolhouse showing some of the work we have done on it. Of course, this is a very an older photo of it, and it had not been used since 1891 as a schoolhouse, and it was used as a carriage house, a storage unit, basically, over the many years. And we were fortunate enough to have John and Larry Bagley donate the building to us, and that was in 2006. It's a long struggle for the historical restoration project, but we're patient. We're very patient. We're very happy about the new roof that's finally on, and now we can proceed to finish off the building, and hopefully we'll be bringing this type of event to the building in addition to our meetings, and have our collections really out there and cataloged appropriately and that sort of thing. I do hope everyone enjoys this exhibit today. We've kind of worked hard. The history of Pepperell is rich, very, very rich. We sent a number of people off to the alarm in 75. And of course, Colonel William Prescott from town was at the Bunker Hill fight, and is attributed to having said, "Don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes," because the troops didn't have many ammunition, or much ammunition. They were running out of their foodstuffs, and they were kind of locked up there on actually Breed's Hill. But one of Pepperell's claim to fame is Colonel William Prescott, who apparently was a very well-liked and knowledgeable man that conducted a lot of the war correspondence that went on, etc. All right. We have assembled, the Historical Society has assembled many, many photographs, written materials, maps, history of the early industries in town, and we can't wait to be able to present it out to you, present it out to the people, because it's wonderful stuff. And we have a great role in the history of the United States. Middlesex County was incredibly influential during the Revolution. There were many, many people from this area who can be attributed or, complimented by their efforts during the Revolution. In fact, downright brave and bold is what many were. We had, I think, 24 men go to Lexington at the call of alarm. Several were killed at Bunker Hill, and that's commemorated at the Walcott Memorial at opposite the town hall on the old town common. Also behind that building is the DAR building, now used, and they also hold a significant number of artifacts. So it's just a pleasure to bring it all together today with several different nonprofit organizations who have their own exhibits, their own mementos pertaining to the Pepperell's very rich history. I think that if people understood how influential this part of the country was to our formation, they would be amazed. I mean, I think it happened in Massachusetts, and if those rabble-rousers in Massachusetts hadn't stood up for it, we might be speaking with a different accent now. I'm not sure.
This is a scrapbook of Colonel Samuel P. Shattuck. He kept it all his life, and it has all the sermons of the first ministers. It has a signature of a document by William Pepperell. And I have a bill of lading where Pepperell ordered from England supplies on the schooner Vincent, and it's a bill of lading. And here I have a logbook of the Prescott Guard from the late 1700s until 1816. It was passed from clerk to clerk. And there's a page here where the Prescott Guard came out to march to the funeral of Prescott. So we have pretty good proof that he was buried in Pepperell. Lastly, Mary L.P. Shattuck wrote the story of Jewett's Bridge. This is her personal copy that she had leather bound. So that's it. There's plenty of more material in this scrapbook. I think that's it. I can say I'm Richard Parker. I'm a lifelong resident of Pepperell. I'm not presently a member of any organization.
That's fine.
I just have this stuff.
So these are yours yourself?
Yes. This was put together by my great-grandfather and this is my great aunt. This book was the last clerk, was another great-grandfather. And he obviously purchased a new book, but he kept the old one. Okay?
Thank you.
I'm Paula Tarassi. I'm the Vice President of the Neshoba Conservation Trust. And we're here today because the Land Trust is a private, nonprofit organization. And we were involved in the protection of Pepperell Springs along with a group of other organizations, including the Trust for Public Lands, the National River Watershed, the Mississippi River Land Trust, the town of Pepperell. And we helped to protect Pepperell Springs, and Pepperell Springs was an old bottling plant. Back in 1901, it won an award at the World's Fair for the best tasting water in the world. And we have some bottles. They also sold soda. So we have bottles and bottle caps and some of the labels. This is a picture of the spring house. And this is where the actual water comes out. The well, it's no longer there, but the well is actually still there that was used for the water. And like I said, we're with the Neshoba Conservation Trust. We're responsible. We have quite a bit of land in Pepperell for people to walk or fish or hike or snowshoe. And we're always looking for new members. And we have membership forms available. And we invite you to visit our website, but we also would like you to like us on Facebook and walk the trails, of course, of course.
Hello, I'm Jeff Sauer. I'm the town clerk in Pepperell. I'm showing off some of the records of the town of Pepperell. In addition to some of the artifacts, we have an old ballot box over here. On your left, we have the town seal from 1900. We've made a seal in the thing. This book is volume 1 of the records of the district of Pepperell. Right here we're showing from 1776 a transcription of the Declaration of Independence. It was read in the center of Pepperell and then transcribed into the town records. This is a copy of the document that created the district of Pepperell in 1753 by act of the legislature and signed by the lieutenant governor. I have some more pages from volume 1 of the records of Pepperell standing up here from 1773, 1774, 1775, and 1777 that give a palpable sense of what it was like leading up to the Revolutionary War and some of the uncertainty that was in Pepperell, and then some of the tension that was brewing over here. And then we have record the town clerk or district clerk got word of the Battle of Lexington and Concord, and he wrote that into the book. We were alarmed by the tidings that a group of regulars quartered in Boston came out to Lexington and killed 9 men there and got as far as Concord North Bridge and so on. Then we have an entry about the Battle of Bunker Hill, and you'll learn some more about Bunker Hill over here at the next exhibit. And we have the payment to the town paying people that have volunteered for military service, including Prudence Wright, who's not named specifically because she's a woman and the town couldn't pay a woman overtly, so they called her the Leonard Whiting Guard, so-called. Anyway, and we have some of this isn't town clerk material here, but these are charming old volumetric measures for the sealer of weights and measures of the town. And then I have some old assessor's records here as well.
My name's Tony Soboloskas. I'm here representing the Pepperell Library, and I brought some treasures today from the library's historical room, or this glimpse of Pepperell past. And if it's a glimpse of Pepperell past, a good place to start would be this item. It's called a stereopticon, and it's a 3D viewer, and it's something people used to use at the library on a Saturday night. Many families would go down, and there'd be thousands of these viewing cards at the library, and they'd put them in the stereopticons, and it's just like a 3D viewer. Look through it, and this particular one happens to be of the North Street School, school number 4. It's still there today, and enjoyable to see the difference between the building then and the building now. I also brought from the library a Grand Army of the Republic sword right here. It's a, thank you. It's a ceremonial sword. It was never used in combat or anything. The Grand Army of the Republic was a veterans organization for veterans of the Civil War. We've got some historical items. We've got some photos of this gentleman here was the leader of the Massachusetts 6th Volunteer Militia. They took the first casualties of the Civil War, April 19th, 1861. His name was Colonel Edward Jones, and he lived on Heald Street. Interesting piece of history. This is Colonel Jones meeting President Lincoln at the train station on the 19th of April. Postcard. And it's probably something many Pepperell residents aren't aware of. At one of their own met President Lincoln at the very outset of the Civil War. We have some Civil War currency sent to the town by the Treasury Department around the turn of the last century. Some of it's in good shape, some of it's been heavily used. We have a newspaper from 1792 with an advertisement for a dye company here in Pepperell. Right here we have Sir William Pepperell's law book. It's almost 400 years old and signed by Sir William. It's called Coke's Institutes, and a series of books. There are 4 volumes, probably what were used by Jefferson and Washington and all those folks for drawing up our 3-branch form of government, the legislative, executive, and a judicial, all in these books. We also have an image. This is going to be hard to see because this is not a photograph. It's called a daguerreotype, and it's of Nathan Shipley. He was born in 1772, lived right on Main Street, and that's his wife. It's probably the oldest image of a Pepperell resident that exists. Again, he was born in 1772 and lived on Main Street. I believe it was 10 Main Street. And this image represents Colonel Jones's daughter, who was quite famous at the time. She obviously lived on Heald Street. When she was 10 years old, she went off to Civil War with her dad. And she was adopted by the men of the regiment as the daughter of the regiment. And this was in a Boston newspaper commemorating that event. Her and her dad were very famous at the time. This is her as an older woman. They would come back to Pepperell every year on April 19th to commemorate the beginning of the Civil War and their role in it. And there are many of these. This is a book written at the time, and this image here is 1865. This is Lizzie Jones in her uniform. She was given a uniform by the men of the company in appreciation for her work in their hospital. Like I said, she went off to the Civil War with her dad when she was 10 years old. And that's her, that's the uniform. It had a velvet jacket, silver canteen. It wasn't a practical thing, it was a ceremonial thing, but the men obviously adored her. And again, she was famous. Every city they stopped in, New York, Philadelphia, there was a parade, and she led the parade for the 6th Mass Volunteer Infantry. And a lot of this stuff, all of this comes from the library. I would like to mention this map here is a map of Charlestown, Massachusetts, where the Battle of Bunker Hill took place. And it's just what things looked like at 3:30 in the afternoon. And I don't know how much people know about the Battle of Bunker Hill. But you can see the blue lines are American forces. We weren't in just one position. It was a little more complicated than people may think. But it was an amphibious operation by the British, who actually landed in ships, stormed ashore, and tried to kick the Americans out. They pushed us off the peninsula, but that was about it. They wasted their offensive advantage. They were never able to attack us again, and by March they evacuated Boston. I'd like to turn it over to Fronick right now, and he can explain some of the documents and images that he brought along, also mostly from the Pepperell Library. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Fronick Killick. It's an honor to be here today, a glimpse of Pepperell's past. I was lucky enough to acquire some things in the Pepperell Lawrence Library. They loaned us a lot of their artifacts, and we thank them very much. One of the most precious things that Pepperell has is an artifact as a belonging of Colonel William Prescott, and it's his cultivating farming tool. And this was a gift that was given, it says on it. This cultivator was made and used by Colonel William Prescott, owned by Kenneth S. Marshall, who donated it to the Lawrence Library, and it's still there today. What I did, I composed a quick poster for people to see. Obviously, Prescott, who's in charge of the 6th Militia, Massachusetts Militia, and on April 19th, the alarm of Lexington and Concord, which our town clerk, he entered it in town logs. We have that. Prescott and his men, they did arrive late for the battle, and then they continued to Cambridge thereafter. And this picture depicts the alarm of Lexington and Concord. And then Tony went over the Battle of Bunker Hill on June 17, 1775, where he claimed his fame, commanding the troops in the famous redoubt. He also, and that's where the famous words, "Don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes," was said. And at the Charlestown Monument, they have the plaques that signified the day, and his statue that's over here. The famous statue made by William Story in 1891. And someday maybe Pepperell can have one here. To the left of that is Don Trione's painting, famous painting of the battle that is the most historically accurate of the battle. As you notice, many of the men, they did not have bayonets, which they feared. And on the right is the British regulars. We do have a bayonet from the Revolution that is present today. So the interesting thing about Colonel William Prescott is that there were no paintings of him, there were no drawings of him, but we did locate one inside the Lawrence Library. And this is the earliest known sketch that we know of Colonel William Prescott. And we had an artist, a local artist from Leominster, Shane Tater. He gave it a little life, and he presented and gave the town of Pepperell this gift of the young Colonel William Prescott, approximately at the age of between 25, 30 years old, approximately. And that's at the Lawrence Library in the history room. Also, Colonel William Prescott, as you know, after the Battle of Bunkers Hill, where he claimed his fame, he served under General Washington, where he went down into New York in 1777. And he was at the Battle of Long Island. And he received a public commendation from General Washington himself. And after that, he kind of retired somewhat. And he was asked to witness the surrender of General Burgoyne up in Saratoga, which is one of John Trumbull's famous paintings. And you can find that online, obviously. But Prescott is behind Captain Morgan in white. So the significance of Saratoga and the significance of Saratoga was that France now got involved and they helped finance the war for our independence. So the fact that Prescott was at Bunkers Hill, he was at Saratoga, is pretty significant. The famous painting of Bunkers Hill by John Trumbull, he kind of mixes all the historical facts into one. It's a fascinating painting, but the interesting thing about this painting is that there was a flag that was flown, and they say that it will look like this. Everybody knows the Bunkers Hill flag as the blue flag, but this was the flag that was actually flown at Bunkers Hill. And Trumbull witnessed this battle, so historically that seems accurate. If he was there, he saw it. And also what we have here is, everybody knows, the Bunker Hill Memorial, also known as the Walcott Memorial. And it's honoring the 8 Pepperell Minutemen that were killed at the Battle of Bunkers Hill. And this is their death certificate, which is really the church records at the time. And it shows that they were killed at the Charlestown Neck. We also brought here, unfortunately, this is not the original. The original is at the Mass Historical Society in Cambridge. So we acquired a copy. And what this is a letter from Colonel Prescott to John Adams, August 25th, 1775, recounting the Battle of Bunkers Hill. Now, there's been plenty of books documenting the Battle of Bunkers Hill, and yet Prescott sums it up in a page and a half. And it's really interesting to note that Prescott is corresponding with the future president, John Adams. So Prescott served under Washington. He corresponded with Adams, guys that framed America, and he was very much part of that. What we also brought here is, in the original is old. Richard Parker has this original. I just have the copy, and he's here today. And this is the excerpt for the funeral service for Colonel William Prescott, and he had military honors at his funeral. And the original's over on the other side of the room. And in that same journal he has, this is what this is a document stating the town of Pepperell getting together for a church ceremony honoring the death of General Washington. He died in December of 1799. On his birthday, the whole town got together, and throughout New England and throughout America, the colonies, they all honored his death. The loss of General Washington was felt throughout the whole country, and Pepperell certainly recognized that. So if anybody wants to do more research and read more about the Battle of Bunkers Hill, visit the library. You can go online, certainly, but there's some books that you really would like to read, and the best ones of them all I believe anyways, is the history and siege of Boston by Frothingham. It's one of the earliest published books of the Battle of Bunkers Hill. This is on loan from the Lawrence Library in the history room. And it has good detailed information about the battle. And Now We Are Enemies by Thomas Fleming is also another excellent book, and you can acquire these at the Lawrence Library as well. But there's many, many documented books about the battle, but these I believe are the best. For local history, besides Old Hearthstones by Abraham English Brown, that is the nuts and bolts of local patriot history, of families with the patriotic stories. That's the nuts and bolts of the history of the town. The cornerstone of Pepperell is the Revolution. It is Colonel Prescott, and it is the Minutemen. Thank you very much.
You want to talk about the history room at the library, Lawrence Library in Pepperell?
Okay.
That's kind of the focus of a lot of this material.
Yes. First and foremost, thanks to Deb Spratt, the director, who's done a wonderful job there, and local historian Jean Palmer. She's been a great asset to the town of Pepperell, a wonderful woman, and she's really protected all the old artifacts and documents of Pepperell, and the room was named in her honor on June 22nd of this past summer. So it's now the Jean Palmer History Room. And inside the history room, you'll find a lot of local artifacts. You'll find a lot of history books of all the local towns. You'll find history books of the soldiers of the Revolution, the soldiers of the Civil War, and a lot of genealogical research of which she has vast experience and knowledge with. She knows a lot of the cemetery records. Stop by, see Jean. She really has done a fabulous, fabulous job with the history room. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Julia Stockwell, Regent of the Daughters of the American Revolution, Prudence Wright chapter. This is Barbara Smith, our registrar and our treasurer. Welcome. We just have a few artifacts from the Prudence Wright chapter. These are Colonel William Prescott's boots that were donated by D.E. They were donated by D.E. Western. Okay, if you notice, there's no left or right to the boots. We also have actually Prudence Wright's lantern that was probably donated by either the Parker or the Shattuck family. The picture to my left is actually Mary Lucinda Parker Shattuck. She was our first Daughter of American Revolution regent, okay, and founder. Our chapter house is one of the old schoolhouses that's located by the Walton Cemetery. Okay. Also in front of us is a picture of the schools, the Pepperell schools. And a book telling you the history of the district schools in Pepperell. There's also a book on all our DAR members and their ancestors from 1898 up until about 1990. Anybody who would like to join the chapter, you need to have a relative that could either served in the Revolutionary War or was like working for the town. So, you know, in our little booklet, you can contact myself, Julia Stockwell. All right, I have a Lunenburg number. It's 978-582-6920, or Barbara Smith at 978-433-9929. Okay, we welcome new members. If you need help doing your papers, we'd be glad to help you.
Hi, my name's Laura Pat. I'm the treasurer for the Pepperell Historical Society. I'm sitting with Claudette Gosselin. She's one of our members. Today we're having a glimpse of Pepperell history here at the Community Center in Pepperell. We have a few things for sale here. We have some 1975 calendars. These are originals. They have wonderful pictures of Pepperell's past. We have some reprints of a 1844 map of Pepperell. It's very nice. It just shows all the different, it doesn't have any streets on it, but it shows where everybody lived. Let's see, we have the Pepperell Reader. We reprinted the Pepperell Reader from 1975. The original was printed then, and so we have reprints of that. That's a great book for Pepperell history. A lot of homes that you might recognize around Pepperell, Prudence Wright, a lot of history in that book. We also have the Pepperell Mural DVD. The Pepperell Mural is a mural that was commissioned by Dick Conway. It's a beautiful mural, and it shows different locations in Pepperell and different historical sites. The Pepperell Historical Society narrated a lot of the history of Pepperell, and so that's what you'll see on the DVD. We also have keychains that show the schoolhouse that we've been renovating on Shattuck and Harbor Streets. And we also have original labels from Pepperell Springs Bottling. That we're selling here today. I took my own and framed it. And it's just a great day and fun for all.
You're always looking for new members.
Yes, we're always looking for new members. We meet the second Monday of every month, and during the summer we meet at the schoolhouse, and during the winter the Gosselins are kind enough to let us meet there. But we're always looking for new members, and if you're interested in Pepperell history, I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diane Cronin. I'm here today with the Historical Society. I also represent the Historical Commission and the Covered Bridge Committee, and I have some things on display from all three organizations. Starting over here, I've got the Pepperell Motocross, which was from the late 1960s, but in 1969, ABC Sports came to Pepperell and broadcast the motocross, which was the first time they had ever broadcast it, and it was the start of motocross being recognized as a viable sport. So that was in 1969. It was done around the Jersey Field, which would be behind the post office. And what we have here is a Viewmaster from like the 1970s, which is kind of early 3D, and it's a reel that was donated by Bob Young of Townsend. And you can view something that was done by Disney, and it was put onto Viewmaster reels, and you can see pictures of the actual motocross done in kind of a 3D. And this is from the Motorcycle Hall of Fame. And this has different notations about Pepperell's race being here. So you can go online and find that, and it mentions the race that took place in Pepperell. Thanks, Dave. Then there's just some different postcards, starting with some from the Peter Fitzpatrick School, a couple of different postcards that were done. I don't know if you can actually see them, but we can get a close-up after. And then the Shattuck School, and then you've got the library and some other unusual postcards from Pepperell. This particular publication is really unusual. This is Telephone Topics. It was done by New England Telephone, and it talks about the fire that occurred at the telephone office, which was actually McNabb Building, and I actually did a lot of damage to the telephone company. But this particular publication talks about Pepperell as well and the phone company's presence in the town. This is just a discourse that was done that is for the churches in town, so it's very fragile. People want to take a look at it. This is the Pepperell Living History Project, which was done with the Pepperell Community Media Organization, and Dave was very involved in that. And the Historical Commission produced this. It was interviews with people in town and images in the town so that we could capture a living history of memories and different photos and things of the town in the past. So we had an interview with Amos Mahoney, and we also did one on World War I, Pepperell in the 1930s. We did some history of the Garden Club, and this was done at the Senior Center, and we also went to people's homes. We put it on DVDs, and they are in the Senior Center. You can get them in the library, and we'll put some more archives in the Society, and the Pepperell Community Media also has copies of these, so if anybody was interested, they could go to them and make a copy.
If you go to Pepperell Community Media's website at pepperellchannel.org, they're available on our video on demand on the internet as well.
Oh, very good. So you don't have to wait or request it. You can basically just click on demand and see whichever series you want to. Oh, that's a great idea. That's working now? That's great. And if you wanted a copy, you could also go to Pepperell Community Media and purchase a copy there. But I did want to point out that thanks to a donation by the North Middlesex Savings Bank, we were able to purchase a new printer, which allows us to print on DVDs with colored images, and before we didn't have that technology. So we want to thank the North Middlesex Savings Bank for purchasing the printer that allows us to have the capability to do that. And here is the grand opening DVD from the opening of the bridge in 2010. And that was a town-wide celebration. You can also maybe get that on demand too. Well, we run that annually though. On September 4th we're going to start to run the grand opening on a regular basis. But this was done. It actually has a lot of participation from different organizations that are in Pepperell and different groups that are in the region. So it was a community effort. And it has a reenactment that was done of the Prudence Wright event at the bridge that actually has descendants of Prudence Wright who are actresses who are reenacting that event. So we had some true descendants of Prudence Wright in the reenactment. It was almost an all-day event, and it was a very big project. The Covered Bridge Committee created that event. We have that on a DVD. It's recently been transitioned to the Historical Society, so if anybody wants a copy of that, they can now go to the Historical Society. Before, the Covered Bridge had ownership of that rights for a couple of years, but we want to get it out to the general public. So we gave it to the Society, and anyone can go there and get a copy of the grand opening DVD if they'd like. And then next, our historic Covered Bridge. And this goes through some different pictures from around the turn of the century, and it shows what the bridge looked like when it actually had some wood slats on the side when it was in the 1800s. Those slats deteriorated and were taken off and exposed a crisscross lattice look to the bridge. And then finally, that's the first bridge. That bridge was then replaced with the Chester Waters Bridge in 1963. That's the image over there. And then in 2008, Chester Waters was taken down, and the new bridge was put in. It was dedicated in 2010. And this has a timeline of different events. And I did want to point out that in the 1700s, mid-1700s, when there was a crossing at where the bridge is now, it was actually half owned by Groton and half owned by Pepperell, the bridge itself. Because when Pepperell was put away from Groton, they divided the bridge. So Pepperell took care of half of the bridge up to the middle of it, and Groton took care of the other half, and we worked together. So that's how it was maintained in the past. Now it's Pepperell's Covered Bridge. This has some documentation about the bridge, some things that were in the newspapers, and it goes into some structural background on the first bridge and the structural components on the current bridge. So this just has a lot of information about the bridge and some images. And I did want to point out that in 1963, when the second bridge was dedicated, that there was a covered, we won't be able to get this too close, but this is just a newspaper article. There was actually a Covered Bridge Committee in 1963 that dedicated this bridge and coordinated an event like the Covered Bridge Committee did in 2010. So there have been 2 Covered Bridge committees in the town of Pepperell. So this sort of continues into what the Covered Bridge Committee has done and some kind of their background. We were appointed by the Board of Selectmen in 2008 to do the grand opening, but also to create a memorial area and a natural habitat next to the bridge on land owned by Fisheries and Wildlife. That's called the Prudence Right Overlook. And the Covered Bridge Committee has been working on that for a number of years. We've received donations from businesses and a lot of organizations and residents in order to make that project possible. It was all done with volunteers and donations. And there's some pictures of what the Prudence Right Overlook looks like today, with monuments and kiosks. You can go down there and see a lot of information about the Covered Bridge and the story of Prudence Right. So that's down at the Overlook right now, and we continue to work on that project, and we have an engraved brick fundraiser that we've been doing, which raises the money to put some brick walkways through the Overlook and at the different monument stops. And we really want to thank the businesses, the residents, all the donors to the Engraved Bricks fundraiser for the donations that they made, because it wouldn't have been possible without their involvement. And then there's a few other things here. The grand opening DVD, some background on Prudence Right. This is actually something that was printed about 100 years after the event at the bridge in April of 1775. This was done in the Boston Globe, and it's a color version of what was on the newspaper, but I also got a printout in black and white that transcribes what was in the newspaper at that time, and it talks about the event at the bridge about 100 years after the event occurred. And some background about Prudence Right. This was written by Tony Sabalauskis, and it was edited by Susan Twombly, and it also can be read down at the kiosk at the Covered Bridge. But we have some copies here today for anyone who wants to learn a little bit more in depth about Prudence Right too. Of course, there's a table here too. The last thing here, this is a video that was done by Bob Poulin, and it is on a Facebook page called Pepperell, Your Memories and Remember When. It's been started about 2 years ago, and it's residents that currently live in Pepperell and residents that have moved away from the town, and he's been creating it for about 2 years. He's got about 886 followers sharing their images, their memories, and as a result of collecting all that imagery, he created and put to music a video that is really phenomenal. And I wanted to thank Bob Poulin for all of his work doing that and for sharing that with us today, because it really goes through Pepperell past and present and all of the people who lived here that wanted to share their photos to put this together. This is photos from private collections. He really did a fabulous job, and he's allowed us to show that here today. You can go online to Facebook, and you can join, and you can follow along with the community that's involved in this. That about summarizes what I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you, and thank you for taping this. Appreciate it. All the hard work that you do.
Okay, I'm Ron Carr. I'm from the Pepperell Historical Society and the Historical Commission, and I've prepared some maps here showing the industries of Pepperell in the 19th century and the railroads of Pepperell over a century and a half. Today it's often forgotten Pepperell was once a major manufacturing center, and this map shows some of the industries that Pepperell one time supported. Everything from paper to shoes to knives, bricks, lumber, and water turbines were all produced in Pepperell. Today we have no railroads in Pepperell. Once upon a time we had 2 separate railroad lines, and this map shows the history of those lines.